Challenge. Perfect example of something that can definitely cause you to trigger the stress response. For me, if tech doesn't work, that is definitely a possible trigger for me. Like, I push the button and I get, no connection this morning. So apologize if you're coming on at 8:15, if you're watching this live. If you're watching the replay, thank you so much. We're going to talk about pressure today, challenges, pressure. And I'm just going to give a definition of what pressure-free living is and what the pressure-free method, the 3 steps of the pressure-free method, like what this thing is. So what I noticed is that we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Other people can put a lot of pressure on us, our parents, our bosses. If you have coaches or private teachers, professors, there can be expectations that we feel that are hard to meet. And when we get into that, there's a gap between what we feel is expected and where we are. We can very easily do something called trigger the stress response. Now, what is that? Well, there's a mechanism in you that protects you from a physical attack. It's called the stress response. And it is so finely tuned within us that the slightest thing can cause it to release a flood of hormones. You hear a lot about cortisol today, but actually the first flood of hormones are catecholamines. I have talks with psychologists about this. They kind of forget it from their textbooks sometimes, but the first flood of hormones are adrenaline, noradrenaline, and dopamine. Now that is a potent little combination on purpose. It goes right into the bloodstream to pull fat and glucose from our extremities so we have a massive amount of energy to fight. So we can violently fight or we can flee. And if you notice, it's not like that controlled running, but it's like flailing running. You're just like out of your mind running, and you literally are out of your mind because your outer brain is going to shut down. So cortisol goes out later to actually fix the brain cells and the extremities, because we've pulled water out of there too. So it's going to get the water, salt, and sugar content of these cells back to normal, and then you can function much better. So cortisol has a great role. Why do people get cortisone shots in their knees? We're trying to get more lubrication. We're trying to get the cells to be in a better state where fat can transport in and out, we're powered back up. So it is a very great role. You don't want to just cancel cortisol. What you want to take a look at is, are you triggering the fight or flight stress response? That's the real question here. And as I started to really dig into this back in 2010, I realized that, wow, we are doing this over and over and over again every single day. And for people who are striving to create things, striving to do better at things, so athletes, musicians, scholars, people in pretty much every profession, like we're always trying to get a little bit better. It's part of human nature to want to actualize. That's the top little bit of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is that we want to actualize our gifts and talents, what we've been given and what we've built as humans. And so there's this like desire in us to do a little bit more, to be a little bit better, whether you're knitting a sweater, whether you're cooking a pie, it doesn't really matter what we're doing. There's always this little bit of, I want to get it just a little bit better. And so the pressures we can put on ourselves can then cause us to trigger this stress response. And now we're going to actually underperform, although it might not feel like it, because that first flood of hormones, those catecholamines, are tricky. You might be addicted to that flood of catecholamines because you're mixing adrenaline and dopamine. You're getting a dopamine hit. You're getting a ton of energy to be able to fight or run away, but it's short-lived. And so you'll actually maybe unconsciously trigger again and again and again to keep these floods of adrenaline going in your body. But that gets exhausting, and that's why You may, have your stressful day at work and be releasing these hormones a lot, and then you get home and you're just exhausted. You just want to flop on the sofa like I am right now. Just flop on the sofa and not do anything. So when I deeply reflected on that, really thought about that, I thought, oh, okay, this is interesting. So what if we don't trigger that massive amount of hormones and don't trigger it all day long? What starts to happen to our bodies and our minds? And the answer is they get healthier. Your immune system gets healthier. Your thought processes get healthier. Your digestion. Pretty much every aspect of your body every body process is affected by these hormones. So when you get clean of them, things really start to change in you. And gosh, I just worked with a client who during the past month, has got a huge promotion, lost 7 pounds even though they were eating more during the holidays. And it was crazy to hear how pressure-free tools were helping them stay calm and confident, even though the new position has more pressures than the former position that they held. So they're able to take on more pressure, more challenges. I think that's one of the gifts of pressure-free living, is that, if you're really looking to create something in the world, you're going to have more staying power. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have the ability to do even more, be more productive, and have fun, right? Because when we're releasing all those hormones, the feelings that can accompany them are really interesting. You might get this elation from the dopamine, but then later you're just really kind of dead. You're just not feeling very well. And if you're building some chronic disease, whether that's mental or physical, you can really suffer. Sometimes I see posts, on social media. I'm like, people are suffering so unnecessarily. They really are. The things they're suffering from, the root base of pretty much all of it, is a constant release of these stress hormones. So if we can get a handle on that, I can't make any promises to my clients, but I can share what's happened to me, what's happened to other clients of mine, and go right to the science. So if I have a client who presents with a certain disease or certain issue, I love to do research. I love to just start studying research on how the various hormones affect that particular disease. If you take a look at my books, especially the CEO book, I go pretty deeply on this. I talk about people like Steve Jobs and Susan Wojcicki of YouTube, and I mention a whole list of people who I believe we've lost too young from cancer, heart disease, or suicide. People in leadership positions around the world, and I think it behooves us to understand this stress response. I remember when I was working with a college student once, and they were like, "Elle, how come we didn't learn this in middle school? If I'd learned this in middle school, I would have had straight A's. So I would have gotten a bigger scholarship." And that's another reason sometimes students come work with me, is like they want a nice scholarship. They want to they want to get rid of the test anxiety. They want to show how they can really perform, which is usually much higher than where they are right now. So I hope this has been helpful. This is yeah, I was going to share the 3 steps of the method. So let's do that right now. So there are 3 steps. Let me start over. There are 3 steps to the pressure-free method: targets, triggers, tools. What are you aiming for? What do you want to see happen? What do you want to see change? And defining that, like really defining that, is the first step. Second step are triggers. What causes you to trigger the stress response? On these shows, I'm hopefully getting you to understand that it could be all kinds of little things. It could be how I couldn't get on this show this morning in a timely fashion because for some reason the cell system wasn't working very well. What are those satellites doing up there, right? And then the third, tools and the 10-second solution. From a resting heart rate, you have about 10 seconds before the two mechanisms of your brain create the whole beginnings of the fight or flight stress response. The first thing that happens is a direct line right to the center of the adrenal glands to release these catecholamine hormones that I talk about. That's a very direct and fast thing. I was working with a hockey player once who said, no, I only have 0.6 seconds before I am fighting on the ice. And I said, okay, so 0.6 seconds is what it feels like. But believe me, you have a little bit more time. If you're in an elevated heart rate, then you have less time. So I help my athletes find the sweet spot of their athletic heart rate so that they're not already too high, which means they've already triggered fight or flight. Now it'll be super easy to trigger again and again and again. But from the beginning, if you can really be in that sweet spot, you will have plenty of time to say to yourself, I don't need to do this, or smile, or one of the little tools that I share. That hockey player, by the way, had been thrown out for 2 weekends of games because of a fight. But the rest of the season, they did not get thrown out of a game. It was pretty interesting. They're still in the box a bit, but they did not get thrown out of a game. So it's fascinating how easy it is to start to gain some traction with this. I've tried to make it super easy because we are very complex. My clients we're all very complex. Our childhood, our memories, what we're dealing with currently, all of the little subconscious patterns that we have, that's all really complex. So targets, triggers, tools. What do you want? What are you aiming for? What are your desires? Then what's causing you to trigger the stress response? Maybe it's the fact that I'm looking at my little area here and it's a little messy. That alone could cause me to trigger the stress response. So noticing. And then third step, tools and the 10-second solution. In my private coaching, I have over 50 things I share with you. That's quite a lot, but 50 ways to interrupt that stress response. That's because everybody's unique. I'm always building new tools based on work with my clients because I really, I need to find what works for them. Sometimes we use tools in combinations. The swim tool that I've shared with you, if you've been watching the show, that's a combo tool. Does a few different things at once, all based on neuroscience and how to interrupt that stress response. Once you gain a little traction, what we're aiming for is what I call the breakthrough day. So the breakthrough day is when you've gone the entire day and you haven't triggered even once. It's almost like a miracle. I worked with a lot of hockey players over the years. One of the hockey players I worked with, he wrote to me the next morning that after the first full day, and he said, I woke up this morning with the most focused energy I believe I've ever felt. Focused energy. Now, for someone who was diagnosed ADHD, like that's a miracle, right? Focused energy. So really, truly, sometimes miracles happen for clients because, again, the root cause of chronic issues always comes down to these stress hormones. So if you're interested in learning more, please pop on my site or just go to pressure-free.com. That will take you to lingalls.com. Okay, sometimes my name is hard for people to remember how to spell. So pressure-free.com. And I'd love to have a conversation with you. If this makes any sense to you and you're thinking, wow, there's more to this than I know, then let's have a conversation. I have an online course. I have my private coaching. I host retreats when it's coming up. Actually, 2 are coming up in the next couple months. And so if any of that feels like it might be good for you, we can have a conversation. So I wish you a great pressure-free day. Bye.